أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل يا عبادي الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله إن الله يغفر الذنوب جميعا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. صدق الله العظيم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Say, O my servants who have transgressed against their souls, despair not of the mercy of Allah. For Allah forgives all sins, for He is oft forgiving, most merciful." Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of Islam for Europeans. And a good brother of mine on Twitter gave me this article. Thank you, brother Muhammad Talha, for leading me to this article. It was written by a British man, a non-Muslim man, whose name is who goes by the handle Zarathustra Aurelius, which I believe is a reference to Friedrich Nietzsche, because he wrote Thus Spake the Zarathustra. And the name of the Medium article is "Why I Can't Be a Muslim." And it says here, this piece is a script for a soon-to-be-released video and is thus written as if it will be spoken. It was actually a really well-written article, and you know what? It really underlies and points out, the gaps that are missing when it comes to acclimating converts in the West in general, and where we need to be able to fill those gaps, because we rarely hear from people, when we look at converts to Islam, and when they try to give recommendations on what the Muslim community can do, it's usually these converts who have already made it. It's the success stories, right? So the advice that they will give is usually not in line with the very many other Westerners who've either converted to Islam and left the Muslim community, or the Westerners who are seriously thinking about converting to Islam, like this gentleman. But there are so many barriers to actually do convert to Islam, A, and B, to last as a Muslim in this environment. So it's a massive case of survivorship bias, and this is a great article that we should be sharing with everyone in the Muslim community, because it just underlies all the problems we've been talking about. And this is what has been creating so many barriers for Westerners to convert to Islam. So hopefully, he's hearing this, and I really commend him for writing this article. I hope I'm not trying to out him or anything, but if he puts it out there on Medium, obviously he's trying to encourage more dialogue, or at least kind of discourse as to what can be done, and the problems that underlie this. So I'm gonna start. See, he goes into first of all the research he's done on Islam, what he's learned about it. The Quran is a complete text, and he really studied how to address the attacks on Islam and the critiques against Islam from the anti-Islam faction of the right. For example, when God talks about inheritance laws, why do men get in certain cases a greater share of inheritance than women do, right? So these people, they cherry pick verses of the Quran and don't tell you the whole story. And this gentleman, he did his due research, and he provided all the other verses in the Quran that show the whole story, and that men are responsible. It's our financial responsibility to take care of women, whether that's our wives or our daughters, or even our mothers. This is a financial responsibility that God has placed on us. So women do not have this responsibility. They don't, wives are not required to spend money on their husbands. If they do, they will be rewarded by God, but it's not a requirement. And when you look at the whole picture, then it actually makes sense, right? So he goes and gives all the different verses about that. So he really did a lot of research on Islam itself. He also talks about the historical context of the revelation, like this quote unquote sword verse, Surah 9, Surah Tawbah, Ayah 5, where it says, Allah says, "But once the sacred months have passed, kill the polytheists wherever you find them, capture them, besiege them, and lie in wait for them on every way. But if they repent, perform prayers, and pay alms tax, then set them free. Indeed, Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. So this verse is in relation to a specific event that occurred after the Muslims, they retook Mecca, and the pagans for several years were oppressing them severely. They were torturing them. The pagans were killing them. The Muslims had to defend themselves. And when the Muslims came back to Mecca, all of the pagans, save for a few of them, were completely forgiven. Right. So this was an incredible act of mercy. They could have taken revenge, but they didn't. Now, God revealed the verse that the pagans have 4 whole months to decide. The ones that were remaining that didn't, convert to Islam, they can either choose to convert, or they can, or they can just leave. They can leave the area. But if they want to hear the verses of the Quran, then we should give them asylum. All right. So this is a specific content, specific context, and a specific historical event. And that's what this surah is referring to. This is not something that you can apply to all times and all situations where Muslims are living anywhere. If non-Muslims are not being hostile to you, you cannot apply these verses. Like you should be treating them with respect and living with them in kindness. So these verses are only towards people who have been aggressing against the Muslims, right? So he goes into that, and he gives a very detailed description. So it's very well laid out, and he obviously did his research. He also talks about the theological aspects of Islam compared to Christianity, why Tawheed, or the oneness of God, which is what we thoroughly believe in, that God is one, that he has no partners, he has no sons or daughters, and he wasn't born, and there's no one comparable to him. That this is counter to the Trinity, that many Christians believe. And he talks about how Tawheed, the belief in one God, pure monotheism, makes far more sense than the Trinity. The Trinity is barely mentioned in the Bible. The Bible normally talks about there just being one God with no partners. And in fact, the Jehovah's Witnesses, even though we don't believe everything the Jehovah's Witnesses believe, they study their Bible. And this is why they don't believe in the Trinity, because they've studied it and they've seen that the Trinity never occurs. The word Trinity never appears in the Bible. And he's always, it's always about one God, pure monotheism. So he really did his research. But what I want to get into in this video is, the last part of his article, which is very important. And I think Muslim leadership at all levels need to read this section. And it's entitled, "So Why Can't I Be a Muslim?" And, I'm going to go into that. And so he says, this video is called "Why I Can't Be a Muslim." And so far, I have made a case for Islamics and explained how it nullified my Christianity or potential Christianity. This is because my reasons do not concern theology or my religious beliefs. I believe in the oneness of God and that the Prophet Muhammad was the final prophet in a line of prophets. My reasons are cultural. I'm quoting him here. Islam is not just a religion, it's a total way of life. It is, and I don't despairingly mean this, but in fact, quite literally, an alien culture for me. Islam's customs, practices, and jurisprudence are based upon 7th and 8th century Arabia, and the regions of expanse have adopted it as it moved outward from its birthplace in Mecca and Medina. Islam carried parts from them while adding to those regions as it grew, creating the Islamic part of the world we know today. All these places were and are significantly different, exotic to a 21st century British man, an ex-classical liberal, and, for better or worse, someone whose roots and manner are distinctly British, European, and Western. I cannot see a way to bridge the divide. It required uprooting my entire lifestyle to accommodate the practices of Islam. Like the wanderer, I would become a stranger to my past self, family, and community. I am someone who has absorbed and wishes to continue to absorb the British and European cultural canon, Tolkien, Orwell, Wilde, and even the Enlightenment classical liberal thinkers, whose ideas I now largely disagree with, are essential because they have been a part of my intellectual journey and will always remain a part of the chain of being that led to my existence. I have barely begun. These things aren't just things I have done, they are things I am doing. British common law, music and the arts, the Industrial Revolution and its economic consequences, the self-deprecating but linguistically clever British wit, Where do these fit in with Islam? I hang the good with the bad. I understand the implications of colonialism and the ever-present ghost of that. Orwell's famous short piece, Shooting an Elephant, will be there in my consciousness to remind me. How can I leave this path behind to adopt customs and practices outside my time and place? Islam needs to be praised for its strength in maintaining its true soul for so long, particularly in the age of modernity. I wish Christianity had done so because I might not now be facing this dilemma. Perhaps Christianity would have won the argument for my soul. Maybe I have never opened the Quran at all. I want to give a practical example of the divide by zooming in on one of the essential Muslim rituals, the 5 daily prayers. Here are the prayer times for a standard working Monday for me. Given my current routine for working, family, commuting, and other commitments, it would be impossible to adhere to this schedule suddenly. It can only be done by wiping the slate of my life clean and rebuilding it from the ground up to revolve around prayer time. This is made somewhat more difficult because I would be doing it secretly, wouldn't have a community, and would be the only one at my workplace. I can hear the echoes of, well, just move house and change jobs, right? It is impractical to uproot my family, renege on my obligations and commitments, and possibly derail my career. The Islamic way of life is a huge commitment and not something I would be willing to say, let's just see how it goes. It would be disingenuous to revert without full intention, mainly as it is a covenant between myself and God. Conclusion. Perhaps I can become a Muslim but retain my cultural heritage. Is it possible? I am somewhat aware of an irony in my statements, given that much of the British identity and culture I admire is gone, its history. So-called culture today is essentially the last season of whatever America was doing. Some people might argue that Victorian-era British culture was closer to that of Muslims today in ethos, if not so much equivalent practice. After all, they dressed modestly. Families were involved in matchmaking. Extended strong families were the norm. There was a religious observance, and sex was conservative. I might be a man out of my time and my own culture, but I am not yet out of place. Can a bridge be built, or is it an exclusive choice? My dilemma has presented a contradiction. If modern Western liberalism is the thesis, Islam is the antithesis. This might even be true in the macro sense and not just internally. How does that get resolved? What does synthesis look like? I don't have the answers yet. I can only do what I have always done when faced with challenges of this nature. Read more and go for long walks to think about it. Thank you. So, and my message to Zarathustra Aurelius is this. First and foremost, technically speaking, from an Islamic point of view, Muslims cannot force a different set of cultural norms, and these are called urf, and this is a term well known in Islamic jurisprudence. And I encourage you to look up the video Islam and the Cultural Imperative by Umar Farooq Abdullah. Wonderful video and wonderful articles where he talks about that in Islam, you cannot force a different set of cultural norms on a nascent Muslim population. And one of the best examples of this is, the Ethiopians who converted to Islam. They, this is during the Prophet's time. During the Eid prayer, they did their sword ceremony in the Prophet's mosque. And this was not an Arab custom, right? So Omar, may Allah be pleased with him, wanted to stop them from doing this. But Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, no, Omar, let them do this. Let them finish, right? And he actually said to them, "Oh, sons of Arfida," Arfida was like the tribe they belonged to, do your ceremony, right? So this was not an Arab custom, but they still did it. So, and this, from this, story that all Muslims know about, it is very important for new Muslims to keep everything that is in their culture that is halal, that is not against Islam. So that includes adapting their cuisine, keeping their traditional dress, the architecture, the things like ways and means of doing, slang. All these things should be kept, within a nascent Muslim community. Now, when it comes to religious observances, those are the things that they should adapt. But anything apart from that has no religious, obligation to it. the converts should be able to keep that. Now, when you go to China, you see that Chinese Muslims have kept everything within their culture, but they're still Muslim. They had the traditional Chinese dress. The Chinese food is halal. You can see the calligraphy combines both Arabic and Chinese writings. And this is all throughout the Muslim world, right? So Islam is not culturally predatory. Within Islam, you should be able to keep everything in their culture, right? Now, in practical terms, you have Muslim populations coming from other countries. So that's a lot more difficult because the vast majority of Muslims are coming from other cultures. So that's why we're encouraging, and there's a lot of support for this among Muslim communities, that the converts, they should gel into, a sub-community so that, they can adapt to this, like you said, talked about, Victorian area culture, which is different from the monoculture of America that we're seeing now, and return back to their traditional culture. So, adapting like Victorian style dress, as long as it's Islamically acceptable, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And even the British food that has kind of gone by the wayside. We encourage the fact that to have iftars that that have this type of like British food. So this is what we recommend for the Muslim community here at the Islam for Europeans, and there's been a lot of positive feedback about that. It's just that getting people to recognize that this is important, not just for Europeans, but also the Japanese, the Koreans, the Latin Americans, to have this kind of cultural synthesis of their culture within Islam. You see a lot of success with the organization Islam in Spanish in the United States, where thousands of Latinos have converted to Islam, and you see this cultural synthesis of Hispanic Latino culture, where they've kept the good things in their culture and this just discarded the bad things, and they're still practicing Muslims. So in practical terms, just from like a cultural perspective, absolutely, converts should be able to keep everything that is good within their culture, whether that's from today or from the past, and incorporate that into their new Muslim identity. So that's one thing. Secondly, talking about the prayer times. So, well, first and foremost, let's talk about why can't you be a Muslim, and should you convert to Islam, even though you're going to face all these difficulties as a new Muslim. Just from like an Islamic jurisprudence perspective, it is better to be a sinful Muslim than like a very pious non-Muslim. Like that, converting to Islam is the most important thing. The Shahada is the foundation, and that the requirement of the forgiveness from Allah, that requires people to obey and like accept the fact that there were messengers, the last of whom is Muhammad, peace be upon him. And by entering into the fold of Islam, all of your previous sins are forgiven. You're given a clean slate, and whatever difficulties you may face, of course you're going to face those difficulties, but converting to Islam, no matter what sins you commit afterwards, no matter what obligations that you miss, that is far better than not converting to Islam in the first place. Because converting to Islam is, to receive the mercy of God is a requirement, to believe that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad, peace be upon him, is his final messenger. So, whatever barriers you're going to face afterwards, like even if you convert to Islam in private and don't tell your friends and family, that's actually acceptable. Like Allah accepts that shahada, even if you don't tell anybody else, even if you believe it within your heart. There were many converts at the time during the Prophet's time that converted to Islam in private because of the enormous backlash they would face from their friends and family. So in terms of like the follow from the friends and family, we at Islam for Europeans, we're always, like we went through it ourselves. I've been Muslim for 20 years. A lot of my friends have, like who are in Islam for Europeans have been Muslim for a long time. So we understand more of the challenges that, new converts are facing. And, just a few things to keep in mind that like Allah says, in the Quran in Surah 65, ayah 2, that, those who fear Allah, Allah will find a way out for these people, where it would have seemed impossible, right? So God is capable of all things. And, you know, like even though it might seem that you're going to face enormous difficulties once you do convert to Islam, you know, praying sincerely to God and you know, fearing Him and being mindful of Him. You know, like God is capable of all things, and He will find a way out for you. Um, you know, yeah, and again, God forgives all sins. I mean, like those who sincerely repent to God, He is capable of all things. And you know, the first ayah that I quoted in the beginning of this video, it you know, like God says right there that you know, like do not despair in the mercy of God, you know, because His God is all merciful, all forgiving, right? So like never lose hope that you know, like that God will not forgive your shortcomings. So that's just in general. But in terms of the prayer times, you know, the brothers there, I mean, this gentleman, Zarathustra Aurelius, he posted the 5 prayer times and he said that, you know, like you would be unable to fulfill these. So just to comment on the prayer time. So again, these specific times, you don't have to pray at that exact minute. I think that's a misconception that, you know, we fail to tell people right off the bat. Fajr, for example, you know, the time for Fajr on August 28th on Monday starts at 4:30 a.m. Sunrise is at 6:03 a.m. So that's the window that Muslims have to pray that prayer time. You don't have to pray exactly at 4:30 a.m. You know, it could be anywhere from 4:30 a.m. all the way up until right before sunrise. Duhur prayer is it says 107. You know, you can pray Duhur you have the window to pray Duhur prayer is from when Duhur starts, in this case 107 p.m., all the way up into Asr time, which is 4:49 p.m. So you have at least a 4-hour window, you know, during the late summer months in order to get that prayer in. Asr prayer starts, you know, at 4:49 p.m. in this case and goes all the way up until just before Maghrib prayer, which is 8 o'clock p.m. So you also have a 3 to 4 hour window to pray Asr prayer as well. Maghrib is from, you know, when Maghrib starts until about, you know, 40 minutes afterwards, or sometimes all the way up until Isha prayer. So you have, you know, the window to pray Maghrib and Isha prayer, depending on the you know, the school of thought, goes all the way until Fajr, and then some scholars up until, you know, like the middle of the night. So in this case, Isha prayer starts at 9:09 p.m. For some scholars, it goes all the way up until Fajr at 4:30 a.m. So that's basically, you know, it's important to be cognizant of that window. And even if you're not able to get your prayer in, you know, you can you can do a makeup prayer. It's called qada. If you're unable to pray at that time, you can make up those prayers later. Of course, it's important to pray on time. But you know, like when you see these prayer timings, you think to yourself, oh my God, how am I going to pray all 5 of these prayers exactly at that time? It doesn't work that way. There's definitely a range. You know, in terms of like your family and upbringing, you know, like again, like God does not place a burden on someone more than he can bear. The Muslim community at this point does not have the resources to take in hundreds of converts, give them a whole new career, a whole new lifestyle. You know, there are some people who have done that. That is very difficult to do. You know, so you know, at this point in time, you know, even if you do convert to Islam, you know, don't quit your career. You know, like you know, a lot of it will take some adjusting. You know, but at the same time, like I said, you know, you will Isha and Fajr prayer, you know, let's assume that this gentleman works, you know, 8 a.m. to like 5 p.m. or 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Let's give it that much. You can still 3 of those prayers are outside of work time. Asr prayer, you can pray when you get home. Maghrib prayer, you know, you're not working. And then Isha prayer, you have all through the night. Now, on top, I assume that this brother Zarathustra's, or this gentleman Zarathustra, is married. So, I mean, like, you know, again, like if he's gonna have incredible follow from his friends and family, I mean, it might be a better idea at this point to keep his conversion private. You know, and you know, sometimes, you know, things change for the better. You know, like I've seen it before. People did convert to Islam. They hid it from their friends and family, but you know, they changed their life for the better. You know, they stopped drinking, they stopped doing drugs, they stopped smoking. They were better to their family members. You know, they're following, you know, the prophetic model over time, over a period of months. And then when they finally told their family that they actually converted to Islam, they say, look, you know, like I know it's a shock, but look at all the positive changes I made in my life. You know, this is because I converted to Islam. And you know, like over time, inshallah, I've seen a lot of families come around and gone from, you know, complete rejection to, you know, toleration to even acceptance. that sometimes may take months or years. And again, this would be this gentleman Zarathustra Aurelius. It is an enormous change. We're not downplaying that at all. Like I do think that like the Muslim community needs to have more opportunities to allow converts to coalesce into a sub-community like this. Like he said, he has no community, and I think this is one of the major problems that Muslims are looking at, that converts haven't collectivized. The white British, there's no identifiable sub-community that they can latch onto that is willing to talk to their friends and family. And I think if that were to exist, that would make it a lot easier for this gentleman like Zarathustra to convert to Islam, and not just convert to Islam, but stay as a Muslim in the Muslim community. So yeah, I mean, this is a great article. I'm reaching out to this gentleman Zarathustra. If he does want to talk, I'm more than welcome to. And he wrote this article on Medium, and he's going to make a video soon. So I'm assuming he put it out there, because he wants to get more feedback from other Muslims. So I'm available to talk. Please send me a message, Zarathustra. You can reach me at islam4europe@gmail.com. You can send me an email or just leave a comment in the comment section of this video. But yeah, I do believe that the Muslim community as a whole, Muslim leadership, should read this article because it's really important, and I think it's a perspective that we haven't really heard from, really. And I think there are thousands of Westerners who express the same sentiments, and many born Muslims who express the same sentiments, that we don't have the tools at a communal level to address the needs of this particular individual, or on a mass scale. Like if there's one gentleman like this, there's probably hundreds, and there's nothing in place, very little in place to help this provide like a parachute, or like like a trampoline once these people fall after expressing their Islam publicly to their friends and family. So yeah, in conclusion, I do think, Zarathustra, I do think that you should take your Shahada, even if it's just in private. Like it's because that's the most important pillar of Islam, and you don't want to die as a non-Muslim. Even if you keep it private from your friends and family because you're afraid of the massive fall that will occur, that's still an accepted Shahada. There were many converts who did so and kept it private from their friends and family for a long period of time. But may God guide you to the truth. I hope that God softens the hearts of your friends and family, so that they do in the end end up accepting your conversion. But yeah, I mean, that's all I have time for today. Please like and subscribe to Islam for Europeans. And yeah, that's it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.